This is Capital Games, I am the Wiz. If you haven't read by now, or if you haven't played the game by now, if you have Game Pass, Redfall came out on Monday with not great critic scores. It's gotten lambasted from the gaming public, and it has basically been considered one of the most disappointing games of the year. It's sitting at a 64 at OpenCritic right now, at a weak 64, and the last I checked, only about 25% of critics have recommended it, and even those who have recommended it tacitly recommend it, basically saying they're hoping that it gets better, but for what it is right now, it's okay. This is a big deal for a couple of reasons. One, Redfall has been something that Microsoft and Xbox have been championing as a new game that is something that you're going to want to play on Xbox for about over a year now. Since then, they've been showing bits of footage and stuff as well. It's only been until about the last few months where people started questioning maybe if the game is going to be in trouble. But when it was released, it pretty much confirmed everyone's worst suspicions that the game just wasn't up to par with all of the different games that Arcane has made in the past. Now, some of you, and some of you who are listening, and some of you who are on the internet say, oh, we gotta blame Arcane. It's time to gut Arcane and see what we can do to fix everything. And I'm gonna say hold up on that, because this is really the first game from Arcane in about, I would say 10 or 15 years that has done this poorly. I know some people weren't fans of Deathloop, but there are others who really love the game, and it seemed pretty solid, even though it wasn't for me specifically, but I know a lot of people who did really enjoy the game. I don't think this is a problem with Arcane, because a studio can have these types of bad games every once in a while. It is perfectly possible for that to happen. Square Enix happens with Final Fantasy. It's happened with other studios as well. BioWare has had a slew of them in the past few years. It is perfectly possible that a really good development studio makes a bad game. It is entirely possible. Now, the reason why I'm mentioning this is I have a really big question to ask. What is going on with Xbox? We've had this discussion before when Zero was here on Weekly Dividends and in other segments. There seems to be a lot of issues going on with Xbox this generation. It's been going on longer than that. It started with the Xbox One reveal. But specifically with this generation, there has been a lot of noticeable issues happening with Xbox. The lack of games being released, the lack of big titles being released, things that will get people to want to buy the console, that they championed as the game to have on the console, which was Halo Infinite, was delayed when it was supposed to release when the Xbox Series X was supposed to come out. And when it did come out, it got good reviews for the single player portion, but the multiplayer was so disappointing, and disappointing a lot of fans, that now there's only about hundreds of people who are playing the game at once. It has been a profound disappointment for Microsoft, and this hasn't really gotten better around these past few years with the Xbox Series X and S. For clarification, I have all the systems. I have the PS5 and the Xbox Series X. I mostly play on Series X because I like the controller and I like how the system runs. I think the PS5 is fine. I don't like the controller very much, and I don't like how the system runs very much. So I find the Xbox much more comfortable. But that being said, I can't deny the fact that the Xbox has not had a good few years. It's not released anything interesting, and if it's save for Game Pass, there really isn't much for me to play on that. What does this mean here? And what could Microsoft do to correct the ship in order to fix everything that's going on? Well, there's some tough questions to ask. First off, the gutting of 343 and turning things over and trying to rework everything was probably the smart move. A lot of people were not very happy with the previous Halos and wanted to see a new direction. So in that aspect, I think that was the right move. But what about Rare? What about and what about Arcane that they just got? Bethesda? I mean, we don't know much about Bethesda right now. If Starfield turns out to be a bomb, then there's a huge problem. But with Arcane, like I said, I don't think that is really necessary right now. It's one bad game, and that happens. So on that note, I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt and say they just had a bad game and let them go on and do something that they have been meaning to do. But that said, I mean, let's look at Rare as well. Rare still has Sea of Thieves, and that's still being updated. That didn't do so well at first, but it ended up being a modest hit. after a certain point, so that's okay. I guess that can be considered a minor hit for Microsoft, but even then, that's really not good. I have one solution, and it's going to be one that I think maybe a lot of people may not agree with. And I'm going to give it in two parts. Here's two options that we have when it comes to solutions. Either one, hire somebody directly under Phil Spencer to take care of the management of the studios, to make sure that they are hitting their targets, that they have enough support and they have enough money to make sure that they can do their games, and that they don't go overboard on certain titles and certain things to bloat the budget. They announced Perfect Dark, 3-4 years ago? And we still haven't heard anything from it. All I've been hearing are, oh, it's delayed again, it's delayed again. Same thing with the Fable remake, or the new Fable game. That's being delayed as well. Apparently, the rumor is that's being redone at this point. We have Avowed, which people think is possibly coming out this year. I'm still not sure. We'll see, but people are thinking that might come out this year. But what they need is somebody to just say, okay, we need somebody to have direct contact with all the studios to make sure that they have enough support and they have a tight schedule to make sure everything runs correctly. I don't know if the issues with these studios is a matter of feature creep, where they start getting more and more ideas and no one pairs them back and says, okay, forget that, let's just finish the game, or if it's just complete studio mismanagement. But somebody needs to step in and pretty much take charge and go, no, we are stopping this right now. We need to get this done, and you are stopping, and we are finishing up the game, and we're doing it in a good manner. We cannot have another issue where we had with Halo Infinite or with Redfall. We can't have that again. So we need to make sure everything is running on time. The other option might be an extreme option. I think might be an option that might be a good idea. Now, bear in mind, if the Activision Blizzard buyout doesn't happen, if that gets blocked, I think this is going to happen anyway. But I think it's time to replace Phil Spencer. And the reason why is that with this generation specifically, this was supposed to be his test. When he came in the beginning after Don Matrick blew it with the Xbox One, his job was specifically save the brand. Save the brand, give us a lot of goodwill, give Xbox a lot of goodwill, and make us look as good as possible. Let's be very consumer friendly so that when we get the next system, we can go ahead and we can really start with a good setup. When it came to building that up, he did a good job. He was that really good transition player from the disaster that was the Xbox One to heading to the Xbox Series X. The problem is, after he transitioned, kind of shit the bed. A lot of delays, a lot of issues with the console, with not just the consoles, but the games that were coming out with it. A lot of PR problems that came happening, studio mismanagement. Lots of issues were going on in regards to how Xbox is being run. And as the leader of Xbox, it falls on him to basically, I guess, fall on the sword and take responsibility for what happened. And he has to a certain extent, but he's still getting a lot of leeway, I think, from a lot of people, because they still remember what happened with the Xbox One and how he saved the brand during that whole debacle, which, again, he deserves credit for. I definitely think he deserves credit for that, because he did essentially save that brand. But now he's at a point now where if he doesn't do something quick, or something doesn't change quick, we're going to be right back to where the Xbox One was in the beginning, and it is much harder to have a brand that is damaged going into a new console generation. Now, I know some of you are going to say, whoa, Wiz, come on. A new console generation is what, now, 4 or 5 years from now? That's a little hasty, don't you think? Well, yes, but how long does it take to turn around a brand? If in another year, we're still talking about the Xbox has no good games, and they're having issues getting their games up and running, it's going to be that issue for quite a while at this point. I mean, at this point, what will Fable have to be in order for it to be acceptable for the amount of time that it was made? What about Perfect Dark? How's that going to have to be for people to accept it after all the delays? It's getting to a point now where Phil Spencer has to have the next few games be mega giant successes, have to make top 10s all around, reviewed excellently, and the sales have to be through the roof. At this point, I'm thinking, in my mind, if this is another bad year for Xbox, Phil Spencer needs to go. And I think if you guys think about it, he did a good job at transitioning from Xbox One to Series X, but at this point, when it comes to actually leading a brand and making it into an upward trajectory to where it's successful, he's not doing that well. And there is such of a leader that transitions from being from bad to acceptable. That is fine to be a leader that's like that. But you need a leader who could take the strength of those brands and boost it up. And it doesn't seem like Phil Spencer has that. Phil Spencer has been doing a lot in regards to getting acquisitions. That's good. But at this point, it's really tough to actually look at what he's doing right now and say that he has actually been a net positive for the Xbox Series X and its generation at this point. As for Xbox right now, I think at this point, they should do the Sony game and basically start buying exclusivity rights for certain games. I mean, if Sony is going to do it, I would say they do it too. That might be the only option they have right now, because if the Activision Blizzard thing does not go through and they have to pay the penalty, which, $3 billion is not bad for them, but if they still have to pay that penalty, they might be very squeamish to go ahead and buy other studios for it to happen again. So at this point, I think they should start doing the exclusivity game and start doing what Sony has been doing. So on that note, I think that if this is another bad year for Xbox, which it might turn into, it's time for Phil Spencer to step down. What do you guys think? Do you think Phil Spencer's to step down? What could Xbox do to turn their ships around? Leave comments on what you may think, or you can email at zerowizcast@gmail.com. On the Movie Club yesterday, we did a review of Yi Yi, a 1 and a 2, directed by Edward Yang. Me and Zero liked it, but we had some issues. If you're interested in that, check it out. Me and Kim tomorrow are going to do a review of The Big Lebowski from the Coen brothers. I am a Coen brothers fan. I'm not much of a fan of The Big Lebowski, but I'll give it another shot. I've been meaning to watch again, so we'll have that. And then Friday, we're going to have the Weekly Dividend, and looking at the news right now, it's been kind of light, so I might do something a little bit different for the Weekly Dividend on Friday, but we'll see. On that note, I am The Wiz. This is Capital Games. Talk to you next time. Bye. Thank you for checking out Capital Games, where we cover the business side of the video game industry. Please like, subscribe, and comment if you enjoyed the video. You can also subscribe to the podcast if you prefer to have it on your podcast feed. And check us out on our socials and email us if you have a question, comment, or suggestion. Thank you for watching and listening. We'll hear from you next time.